Please excuse my clumsy delivery. The movie is X. So X is a 1970s grindhouse sort of film. It takes place in 1979, just outside of Houston, Texas, when a young group of filmmakers travels out to the rural countryside to film a porno. And when they get out there and stay at their lodging, they find out that their elderly kind of caretakers for the weekend don't actually know what they're up to. And come nightfall, a bloodbath ensues. The movie stars Mia Goth, Brittany Snow, Jenna Ortega, and is directed by Ty West, who former horror director who's directed such things as The House of the Devil or oh my gosh, Cabin Fever 2. It is produced by A24 and Agbo. It is a really interesting indie film, and I'm excited to talk about it. Andy and I went and saw it together, and then you've seen it as well. So I want to make sure we get everybody's hot takes. But first off, Andy, what did you think of X?
I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was a great line where one of the guy who's like filming everything is saying, just because we're making smut doesn't mean we can't make a great film or make great cinema. And that's kind of a summary of this film, that it's this kind of grindhouse, a tribute to slashers of the 70s and 80s, but it's much more polished in a lot of ways. It's a lot of fun. It's properly scary in a lot of places. You get a lot of throwbacks to other horror films, and I really enjoyed it overall. And yeah, get into it. Then what do you think?
Oh, I really enjoyed it too. It definitely felt a lot like it was paying huge homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because there's a lot of shots that resembled it. Like even I sent you when the trailer came out, they're all in the van, and the shots were kind of similar.
Right.
But yeah, sorry, I'm in the same boat. I thought this movie was really good actually, much better than I thought it was going to be. I definitely tried to go in fresh. The longer we've done this podcast, the more movies we go see, the more I try to feel like I will watch trailer once, then not watch it again. And that was the case with X. I knew it was coming. I kind of had an idea what it was about, but I was like, I don't want to know any imagery going in. I don't want to have thoughts in my head of what the killer might look like. I'm just going to go in and kind of uncover the mystery. And X does a really good job of kind of opening this wonderful little storybook of a horror film up to you and presenting this great little like hour and 16, like what is it, like 146 minutes? It's pretty quick, a little over 90 minutes. Just one of a little picture just opens and closes in this great little loop. Every situation it presents, it closes. Every opportunity, every door opened, closed. Like, it's a very nice, tight, well-directed, well-scripted, well-put-together horror film, and I'm really excited to talk about it because I think it's really good. So where do we get started? I think probably in our setting. We are in countryside Texas in 1979, like Vin said. Big Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes, especially in just the general plot of the film. Yes, our group of young, horny teenagers arrives at a shack out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And really awful things happens to them. Like it's got film grain. It's a lot of it is shot in 4:3, even though most of it's widescreen. Fortunately, it's 100% a nostalgic throwback to the days of yore and the films of old and movies by Tobe Hooper. Really, really stylistic throwback to old films, which I think is interesting. Because it's, reminiscent of older horror without necessarily being some kind of like requel, sequel, prequel thing that seems to be so popular in the genre now. It's an A24 film, and it feels like it, right?
Yeah,
Andy?
we have much more interesting characters. We have good actors playing our porn stars and filmmakers. And, they have big dreams. They're all in this, they're in this van, all trying to make it big, and we're gonna make an adult film.
We're gonna be stars.
Right. It reminded me a lot of Boogie Nights a little bit. And like me, the main character, one of the main characters, played by Mia Goth, Maxine, she has like these motivational speech moments where she's like talking to herself in the mirror. She says something like, "You will not accept a life you do not deserve," or something like that. Like they're really, they see themselves as, they're going to make it big, and this is like their one chance, and they're going to make this grindhouse porno out in the woods, and it's gonna be huge. It's called The Farmer's Daughter, so you get a movie within a movie, which is a clever thing.
Yeah, a little bit. Nin, what do you think?
It's like you said, reminiscent of like older horror movies and like 70s exploitation films. And I really liked how there was like the shots where they're doing the movie in the movie, but they show you like the movie clip and it's actually like grainier looking,
Right.
even like the old porno movies. And so you mentioned The House of the Devil. Ty West actually shot that in 16 millimeters so that it was just like 80s films. So I'm not sure if he did similar things here with that.
Yeah, he's definitely got an appreciation for the genre for sure. It's an industry he's been it's an area he's been working in for a long time, and I'm not really familiar with his work. I don't know if I've actually ever seen a Ty West movie proper. Like I don't think I have. I've heard of him before, not just because he has a particularly memorable name, but because of his work. And so this was my first opportunity to really jump in and get into it. I like this movie. Features a small cast. It's headed up by Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, and Brittany Snow. It also features Scott Mescudi, or if you don't know him by his stage name, Kid Cudi, who is super good in this movie, who I didn't think would be like outstanding. Also a man named Martin Henderson and Stephen Uri, two gentlemen who I'm not familiar with, but are also really good. Very small cast, very well directed. Everybody's got a good part to play, and they all play kind of these generic versions of kind of a small adult film crew in the 1970s. It sounds silly, but hear me out. You've got your director who's kind of organizing the whole thing. You got your young seedy cameraman named RJ who wants to make movies like they make in France. Yeah, who's very, very obviously a tip of the hat to the audience.
He's an A24 this porn film.
That's right. He's just because, like Andy said, just because it's a dirty movie doesn't mean it doesn't have to be great cinema. You've got his assistant, who's his girlfriend, played by a young, doe-eyed Jenna Ortega. And then you got the two. Oh, you got a couple other kind of more seasoned porn stars, played by Brittany Snow and Kid Cudi, and you got the two older caretakers at the house where they arrive. Who are
let's get into that
just creepy looking. My God, yeah. Can we talk about them for a second?
Yes, when we get go ahead, Nin.
I was gonna say I don't know how old they're supposed to be exactly.
300,
like decrepit.
Yeah, a million.
We get to this remote farm, and it's kind of like they have a barn that's kind of like a bed and breakfast. They have several rooms there, but they get there. And as soon as he knocks on the door, guns put in his face. Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you from the county? I'll shoot you in the face. And so we get a lot of tension. Like right away, there's been a little bit of a mistake, and the guy's like, "No, I've called ahead. You have a place to rent. We're here to, It's like, so there's some confusion there, but they sort it out. But this couple is so weird, and we never see them for like the first half of the movie. You don't really get a good look at them. You see their faces covered in shadow half the time, or at a really far distance, and you see his wife Pearl like peering out of a window from the second floor. Like you're like, is she there? Is she not there? It looks like there's a ghost. It's like the whole setting is so creepy, and like we all know what's going to happen, but it does a great job of establishing this really uneasy mood.
Yeah, I definitely found myself wondering, like, where's the danger going to come from, right? Because it's honestly almost the film is almost split into two parts. Like the first half of it is pretty innocent. I mean, it's spicy for sure.
They're making
they're making a porno, but like it's not bloody yet. Like, but there's so much creep and so much good setup, and like as the film kind of goes on, and as the sun kind of goes down on this evening in Texas, it just starts to get a little eerier, and the soundtrack kind of brings it down a little bit, and before you know it, night's fallen and bad things are happening. But like Andy said, you don't get a look at our caretakers. And it keeps them very mysterious because you don't know what the hell's going on with them. It's like, well, something's wrong with them, but I can't even really see their faces all that well. It's a good choice in staging and lighting and direction to keep them kind of in shadow a little bit, because they seem like they'd be harmless, right? There's just a couple of old people in Texas. How bad could they be? But come to find out, like that may not be all that's happening on this farm, and there may be more to it than meets the eye. Nin, any thoughts on our cast? I don't know. What do you think of them?
Oh, I really love the cast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised that, well, I guess one of the cast members has two roles in the film.
Yeah,
I was surprised by that as well.
I was also did not know that going in. That was a surprise.
I was going to mention we get to know our old people a little bit more than I think the average movie. And it turns out like Pearl used to be kind of a dancer. She used to be this beautiful, beautiful young woman, and her husband would do, like, you know, they met in like the First World War, and he would do anything for her. And they both kind of have this longing of youth, and they're somewhat jealous of these group of young people who have arrived and have all that youth that they wish they still had.
Yeah, and it's also like the movie's kind of I don't know, part of its theme is kind of like the introduction of the new and like technology, right? Like on the one hand, our house out in Texas, our small town nowhere, is like decrepit and old and rotting, and the people there are old and they have lived their lives and they are towards the end, right? And like their old tube TV is running black and white sermons of talking about God fear and Christians and whatnot. Meanwhile, like our main cast is like shooting a tape for like the VHS boom, because like home video is just starting to become a thing, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna make this thing, and we can just put it out there, and anybody can find it. Like it's amazing."
Yeah,
And they got a camera, yeah, and they're making things that are new and different and exciting, and everybody there is young and they look great, right? Like because they're adult film stars mostly, and they all look attractive, and they all like represent this like vigor of youth, and our old folks who are a bit more conservative are not so much into that, it seems, once they kind of get to know their new residents.
Yeah, like one of the biggest themes seems to be, I guess, aging, or the horrors of aging and being forgotten.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about this movie that I was looking forward to, because I was like, I'm sure we're gonna have horror stuff, but like, what is it gonna be about? What are some of the themes? And that's like this idea of aging and youth, or lost youth, no longer having youth, and old versus young. It's not a ton, because it's a fun 100-minute film, but there's just enough in there between our old couple and our group of young friends, and even just kind of even some fighting infighting amongst the group. Like Ty West does a lot with just small amounts of dialogue.
Yeah. And good scripting. Yeah, and that's the next thing I want to get into. Perfect segue. The script is so tight. It feels like every joke has a punchline, and every payoff had a setup, whether you remember it or not. Like since we watched it, we've been kind of comparing notes, and it turns out like there's a lot of hints towards setups later in the film, early in the dialogue, that like you will likely miss first time around. So it's smartly written. It's also funny. It's a very funny
It's really
movie.
funny.
Yeah, like outside of the horror and kind of these larger themes, there are like very intentional laughs in the movie. Like some of it might seem small or like something maybe insignificant, uh, like an adult film star's silhouette in the dark during a particularly scary scene, like which is like not yeah, right. Nobody's laughing on screen, but like it's very clearly funny, or just like lines in the script that are like just intentionally laid out to be funny. I laughed a bunch during this movie, which is not easy to do in most horror films, especially when it gets as serious as it does in the second and third act.
I wasn't really sure about laughing because our theater was so quiet. Like my friend laughed and he's like, I don't know if I was supposed to laugh or not, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. We definitely had some guy in our theater because we walked in and it was like there weren't many people in our theater. We were wondering how many people were going to be in there. And there was just kind of a smattering of a few people, and it was all dudes. And like, at one particular joke, Brittany Snow says something that's particularly crass because she's a porn actress, and some guy a few rows behind us like, I like died in my seat. Like it's great. So like I'm glad I got to see this with a few other people, because I think it's definitely something you can enjoy with friends for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's get into the horror of it all.
Let's get into
the scare and gore. So the first half of the film is mostly mood and setup, and there's lots of tension and lots of like this old couple, particularly the wife Pearl, is so creepy, so unsettling. She just kind of is wandering around this little farm like a ghost. So that's what we have most of the first half, and before the carnage starts. And man, when it starts, it goes hard. It's we get a lot of gross out gore, good old fashioned like kind of practical effects kind of stuff. Stuff that'll make your stomach churn a little bit, but that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
There's definitely some good kills there.
Yes. Some surprisingly graphic depictions of gore. I like that's open very early in the film when our van of unknown victims is driving along in Texas landside. They end up coming across a cow that was hit by a truck on the side of the road, and it's like guts out, blood all over, and that's right. Warning right in the first act. Hey, this is gonna get real explicit. You're gonna see some gross stuff. We're not getting away from this. Which is smart again to set up and a payoff. And yeah, we do get some pretty exciting, I think kills in the second half of the movie. They definitely come at you quick, which was surprising. Something Andy, you pointed out after we saw is you were going and wondering how are they going to keep this group of young, obviously like vibrant individuals from seeing and knowing that one another are getting murdered, right? Like how are two old people going to manage a group of like 8 young individuals? Like how does that work? And the movie's got a really clever way of answering that. It's simple, but it works, and it does exactly what it needs to do. It's a very simple device. I won't get into it because I think it's kind of spoiler territory, but it's effective, and it gives everybody a bit of a scene. It makes nobody feels like they're wasted. It feels like every member of this cast is used effectively in their role, like pawns in a chessboard. Sorry for the chess pun, Andy. I know that's thing, but yeah. What do you think?
I think that one of the things I appreciated is that we didn't have dumb characters. They didn't go off and be like, "Oh, I'm going to go investigate this dark basement by myself." Everything they do is very plausible, and they try to do things to escape the horror, and they also do a good job of like not knowing that other people have been offed at some point. A lot of times it'll be really obvious that someone's been killed, and they're like, well, let's stick around and investigate. But like the writing is really tight in that way where it doesn't make a lot of sense. You're not rolling your eyes at how stupid the characters are.
No, I think it would have been easy to make it feel kind of goofy and like a little tongue in cheek, like just kind of a goofy slasher horror movie that's a tribute to older films. But this one goes the extra mile, like, and it makes it feel relatively plausible. There was definitely a couple times when I thought, okay, this wouldn't quite work, but by that time you're well in the third act and your characters are panicking, so it's like, well, yeah, your victims are in full on panic. Like, yeah, okay, who's to say they didn't hear that over there, or they didn't see that thing they should have seen? Like it kind of adds up. Overall, I'm surprised at how tight it all wraps up, like, and how well it all comes together as just kind of this slice of a feature, all on its own. There's definitely, I think, some potential for future work in this kind of film, that if you stick around till after the credits, you might find out more about that. But otherwise, I'm just surprised at how well wrapped this whole thing is. Like, it just feels like nowadays in horror movies, I don't know, everything's got to be a Blumhouse production, right? And it's got to have some kind of big gimmick. And like this movie feels, yeah. And this one feels just surprisingly simple. I like the way it just kind of feels like its own thing. It doesn't have to be, but I don't know. In a way, I hope it is. What do you guys think?
I definitely think it could stand alone on its own. Like, I do like what they're doing with the end credits there.
Yeah.
But even because a bunch of people got up and left, I always stick around.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, it definitely stands on its own. I mean, it is a kind of very generic picture. I mean, he could revisit this in 10, 20 years, with like going back to the farm where the whatever happened. He could. Horror always lends itself to that, but he doesn't have to. It stands on its own. It's a fun little movie. Like I said, it's the kind of thing like you would have a good time watching this with a group of friends.
Yeah, I think for sure. Any other thoughts for recommendations, gang?
I think I'm ready.
All right, so I don't remember how we did this with Candyman, but I think we'll do Andy and then Nin and then me, or do we do Nin and then Andy and then me? How do you guys want to do this?
I'll start.
Andy, go ahead.
I would recommend X. It's a lot of fun. It's good horror. It's well written. It's properly scary. That like get so creeped out in the first half of it. There's a lot of uncomfortable things. Not just the kills, which are always a lot of fun, but just like the sense of ever looming dread that the bottom's about to fall out, but you don't know exactly when. We get fun characters. We have a little bit of social commentary going on. This kind of everything about progressive relationships between men and women and young and old and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. Definitely recommend.
Nan, what do you think?
I also definitely recommend it for anybody that's into horror, especially because it's so nostalgic for classic horror movies. And it was definitely a really fun watch. I'd probably revisit this one again too.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Ringing recommendation. I think X might be top 10 of the year material, especially if you're a horror fan. Like, you should definitely go see what this movie's doing. It's weird. I guess I feel like I'm used to A24 really campaigning for like films that they're excited about. They've been pushing for Tragedy of Macbeth at the Oscars over My Boy the Green Knight, which bums me out. But it just seems like they put money into projects they believe in, and I just don't feel like I've seen a lot of attention for this one. And it's weird because it's really good. You should definitely go check out X in a theater if possible. It'll be on streaming, but it won't be as fun. Yeah, and keep it here on Alt Script for more from X, I guess.